A very good evening, everyone. I bring greetings from the Nagaland Baptist Church Council, and I'm also thankful for the opportunity that has been given to me tonight by the Forum of Naga Reconciliation. Tonight, as I was approached, I was thinking and pondering on what to share. And then I also came across in a newspaper about humility. And I think it would be very apt to talk about humility tonight. So I want to talk about the humility of Christ. In the ancient world, the word humility was not appealing. It was the word honor, which is called Philotymia. This was universally regarded as the ultimate asset for human beings. Honor. We all like honor. And shame, the ultimate deficit. The Greeks, the Romans avoided public shame and ensure for family honor publicly. So in the ancient world, there is no place for humility. Rather, the Greeks were known for bragging. They were known for boasting around, for their achievements. And perhaps this influence on the modern trend of popularity and the culture of honor must have derived from the Greeks to the Romans and then to the Western world and to us today. And since humility has been overshadowed and it is understood as weak, it is latent in the popular world. Undeniably, this humility is the least sought virtue. Yet today, still then, even if it is the least sought virtue, I want to talk about the humility of Christ. Although Jesus Christ himself taught humility in his life, it is doubtful that his personality, teachings, and sermons had established humility as a virtue in the Western culture. But it was more than his teaching, that is, his crucifixion, that became the symbol of humility. The sign of crucifixion became a powerful influence of humility after Jesus accepted the crucifixion. And to the Western culture, humility turned into a virtue. It was through the death of Jesus on the cross which ultimately turned humility into virtue, which has become an honor today, especially for Christians. The sign of crucifixion became a powerful influence of humility after Jesus accepted the crucifixion. Now, the text for us tonight. I have been given only 15 minutes, so I will be very particular on that. So, the text is from Philippians chapter 2, verse 1 to 11. But I will only concentrate on verse 5, 6, 7, and 8. And so I will read it out to you. In your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped or used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. So this passage theologically is called the kenosis of Christ. So the interpretation of the kenosis means Christ emptying himself. Christ emptying himself, kenosis. So to understand the idea of what literally Christ emptied from him, there are two things that we want to consider. First is, he surrendered something. And the second is, he took on something. So, from these two things, we will also make some implications. So, here, what did Christ surrender as God? He was the Son of God. He was there from the beginning. But what did he surrender? First point, Christ surrendered his equality with God. It was in this privilege, such as status, authority, power, were involved. But Christ, in order to become human, to be born as a child, he had to surrender that he already had, his deity, the powers. And so his equality with God the Father, he surrendered that. Secondly, he also surrendered his independence. Now, after becoming human, Jesus had to operate under the divine will and purpose of his Father. Whatever his Father likes, he had to do. Whatever his Father says, he had to do. Even though Jesus wanted to act on his own, he cannot now. He is under a certain bond. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Luke chapter 22 verse 42, it says, Jesus, thinking about the pain that he had to go through, thinking about the sins, the weightage of sin that will crumble upon him, he prayed to God, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. He surrendered his independence. The third point is, he surrendered his right as a deity, as God. He surrendered his right. Now, a deity cannot die. A God cannot die. We cannot crucify God. But in order to let us understand God in our own human ways, God had to die in becoming human. And in dying, he gave up his right as a deity. Because God cannot die, so he had to give up his deity, in a sense like his right as a deity. Because a deity has no right to die. So Christ surrendering his equality with God doesn't mean he ceased to be God. He was still God, but he did not overcome his human challenges with his deity nature. Christ was God-man. Jesus was God-man. But there were times that he also exercised his deity to know the things that will definitely glorify God. When he met the woman at the Samaritan woman at the well, Jesus knew that she had 5 husbands. And all this knowledge came from he being a deity, but not to glorify himself or his position. Jesus did that to glorify God, his Father. And this woman realized that Jesus was a prophet. And she became the evangelist of her native place after meeting Jesus. That's the place where Jesus glorified God by using his deity. Now, what did he took on? First, he surrendered something. 3 things. His deity, his equality with God, his independence, and his right as a deity. The second thing is, he took on something. First, he took on the incarnation. Gao mongso hobole. to become flesh and blood, in becoming human, there was nothing to gain. It was rather a loss and a form of degradation. For Christ to become human, there was nothing gained. It was a humiliation to take the form of a flesh, being a deity. And in this line, Saint Augustine said that even if human beings were lowered to the rank of a beast, this could not even approximate the lowering of God into humanity. Christ choosing to become mortal as an immortal is something that we cannot imagine or compare. We becoming animals. Because animals and us, we all are mortals. But Christ was immortal, but he became mortal. That's the kind of condensation that Jesus made. So he took on that body. Second, he took on the form of a slave. He could have chosen another class. He could have chosen to become a king. But he chose a slave. A slave has no right even to live. No right for any kind of status. His master can choose to kill him in any form. That's the form of bonded laborers and bonded servants those days. And Jesus chose that form of slave. Third thing, he took on the responsibility to obey his Father's will. And he said, my foot is to do the will of my Father. That's what he said. And finally, he took on the way of the cross. He took on the infirmities of all our infirmities upon him. He was obedient till death on the cross. Now, why did Christ take the human form? Was it the best form? When he became human, the responsibility of his humanness became even more real than any other times. So, in his pre-incarnate, before Christ became human, before Christ was born as a child, he continued to be a person, but not in the flesh and blood of humanity. Now, as he feels the brunt of the reality of humanness, he can feel the experience of our agonies even better. Not that he needed experience to feel us, but that we can relate him better. That we can relate him better. Christ does not need an experience to go through pain and suffering, to feel our pain and suffering. But he did that so that we can relate him better. We can relate Christ better. So incarnation is human word, not God word. Now, there are also times we doubt if Christ indeed became human, fully human. He must have been born under human flesh and blood. And therefore, he is not exempted from sinning. The problem is, many times we define our humanity of Christ from the perspective of us, from the perspective of human beings. But Christ becoming human was perfect. And Jesus, prior to Jesus becoming human, there were only two perfect human beings. They were Adam and Eve before their fall. They were the direct creation of God. God created Adam and Eve with his own hands. So God cannot create something imperfect. It is perfect. But they choose to disobey God. The virginal conception, the virgin birth of Christ is the direct creation of God. And it is a miracle. It is a direct creation of God. And that is why it is perfect. And that is why we need to define our humanity from the perspective of Christ. Not from our human perspective. But many times, Isorbi gao mongso de aishe kole taibi biya kam do kurin thakbo bamna do kurugina thakbo inika nohoi do taido. He was different from the conception. He was different. He was the direct creation of God. That is why we need to define our humanity from Jesus' humanity perspective. Now, we have seen that Christ's humility was his humanity. His humanity was his humility. Now, in this line, John Dixon, he said, the humility is the noble choice to forego your status, deploy your resources, and use your influence for the good of others before yourself. Now, it's interesting. This man, General McChrystal, he was the runner-up of the year 2009 for the Times magazine. And he was the commander of all the NATO-led forces in Afghanistan. He's a general. He was asked by the news reporters, how can the US win the unwinnable war in Afghanistan? And this general said, humility. And everybody got said, what? Humility coming out from the mouth of a general, a military general. Kinika, how? But he said, many were shocked to hear what he said. But he went on to say that the unwinnable war can be won through humility. So, humility, he means understanding and serving the people of Afghanistan and being counterintuitive. Not undermining the influence of the Taliban. What he meant was, humility is the noble choice to forego your status. If you go with the attitude that you are higher, you are better, you are smarter, then you will lose. That's what he said. So, in our conversation tonight, Christ's humility, this evening says, Christ surrendered certain things, took on certain things in becoming human. Christ did forego his status, deployed the resources for us, and made his influence for the good of us. Now, here, the implication. Very quickly, 2 points again. What do we need to surrender today? For every one of us. As Jesus also have surrendered something in becoming human, we need to surrender images such as, we are the most powerful ones. We are the weakest. We are being betrayed. We are being swayed, blaming the other group. That kind of images we need to surrender if we are imagining reconciliation. It is time to surrender our status as being the most dominant one and become equals. Are we asked to surrender our selfishness in serving the nation and community? Christ was not selfish. Rather, he was selfless when he thought of becoming human. He thought of you and me first. We are called to surrender our life to Christ. And if at all, we are all meant and called in that. And in that, if you and I respond, everything falls down. Guns, prejudice, division, pessimism, religiosity, hypocrisy, you name it. Everything must fall down from our arms. Point, implication number 2. What do we need to take on? Take on the disadvantaged side, even if it is going to take more time. Be on the disadvantaged side sometimes and at times. Take on the truthful path, even if it hurts. Take on the responsibility of giving, not demanding. Take on Christ's way and not your way or our way. Take on the peaceful path. Choose peaceful means of negotiation. And to the Naga political groups, I want to say, you may think that you can protect us with your guns. That was yesterday. But in today's warfare, you will need us, the public, to protect you. It has changed. The game has changed. And so take on the public mandate with you as you continue to serve the nation. It is not the immortal nymph Thetis and mortal Peleus producing Achilles, the warrior. It is not the handicapped genius, atheist Stephen Hawking, commonly known as the master of the universe, who used a single cheekbone muscle to communicate in a speech device, yet communicates the knowledge of the universe. But it is God who indeed became human being and who still continues to come into our lives, still amazes us, His word, His will, and His wisdom. If He has done so much for us in becoming human, the question is, what do you and I have for Him as we prepare ourselves for Christmas? As we celebrate this Advent, may our hearts be merrier, humbler, and closer to God. May God's name be glorified. Thank you once again. God bless you all.